Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. We've got new developments tonight in the Onision Greg James Jackson YouTube Psycho Brat case from Washington State. We also are going to pick up our conversation with Kylie, who is a survivor of Dahvie Vanity, aka Jesus Torres, the frontman for Blood on the Dance Floor. She was on last week and told a very compelling story. And there's more to tell on Kylie's story, and she has more to say, and we want to hear it. I think you'll find it very important, as well as to talk to her about what has happened in the week since she first spoke out publicly on this show. And if you'll remember, Kylie spent many years not really saying anything about this and apologized to one of our other guests, Ashley Lilly, who was on with her as well. So I'd like to start tonight with Kylie. Kylie, how are you tonight? Thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm good, thanks.
So let's start here. What has been the reaction since you first spoke out? You talked a bit about your experience with Dahvie, your years sort of being under his trance, and your thoughts about, why you defended him and why perhaps you were aggressive with some of the other survivors. And you made great strides and a big effort to reel some of that back and to make up for that. What's been the reaction since you came on the show?
Since I came on, it's been pretty overwhelmingly positive, which is great because it's really not what I expected at all. Yeah, of course, you have some people who have something interesting to say always, but it does also kind of speak to, Dahvie is kind of losing traction a little bit. So the people that I once would have expected to maybe come after me for having come on the first time, they're just not around anymore.
Do you think that, did you think that you were going to have haters after being on, after saying what you
Yeah.
had to say?
Mm-hmm.
And why?
Because I think, I guess in my mind, when I did it, I was really worried that people were not going to understand and they were only going to see it from the side of like, hey, this person knew what was going on and didn't do anything about it. I didn't think people, there had been a lot of guests before me, but I didn't think that they would kind of understand where I was at that time.
So take me back, Kylie, to the beginning when you first met Dahvie and you had that first interaction that scared you but didn't scare you away. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so I had met him once before, but that incident happened when I was 15. So he had played a show here and he knew who I was. We'd been talking at that point for a few years. So after the show, I went up to him because he always came out and would talk to everybody and hang out for a little while. So I walked up to him and he was, just surrounded by young girls. And when I say young girls, I was 15 and I was probably the oldest person around him. So there were a lot of girls around him saying things like, oh, hey, will you sign my chest? Will you do this? Can I have a kiss? And he would be like, no. And at this point, I was kind of like, I'd made my way up to right beside him. And he goes, but I'll sign yours. Do you want me to? And I'm like, sure. So he does. And then shortly after that, he leans in and he tells me to tell one of my hot friends to text him back, which is a person who was the same age as me, who he had met I want to say a week or two before at a different show in another state. So after that, the crowd had kind of dispersed. I was hanging around for a few minutes and then he was kind of leading me towards the back of the venue, where the tour bus would be if they had one at that time. I don't remember seeing one back there or in the alleyway at least, but he was saying things like, oh, we should hang out, like, what are you doing tonight? But all the places that he wanted to go, like all the places downtown, were like adult arcades and stuff, which I obviously would not have been able to get into. So then we're behind this fence that leads to behind the venue. So it basically separates the sidewalk from the alleyway. And we're behind this fence, and he kind of just grabs me and then kisses me while simultaneously, he's like groping me. Um,
And you're 15 at this time, Kylie. What's going through your mind? I mean, obviously you were a fan of his, you had a connection to him online, but 15 is 15. And you're back in the dark with Dahvie Vanity being groped and I guess fair to say forcibly kissed. What are you thinking at this moment?
I was overwhelmed, I guess is the right word. I was worried because I knew what kind of person he was, and I was afraid that it was going to lead to something that I didn't want to do. And at that time, I don't know if I would have been confident enough to say no if he would have pressured me farther to do something else. But I was 15, like I had kind of just started liking boys. So, after it happened, I really talked myself down just from the fear of the situation by saying like, oh, well, this is what boys do. This is what boys do when they like you.
Did you have feelings for him at that age, looking back?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
as
think,
much as a 15-year-old girl could have feelings for somebody who is, what, 10 years, 11 years older?
yeah, truthfully, I really always did the entire time I knew him, but I kind of knew that on the same hand, it was never going to be like, it was never going to be anything serious.
Was it a combination of being scared, being flattered, being in awe of this person you felt
Yeah,
was
it
a
was both.
celebrity?
So I was comfortable because, I hadn't really been in a situation like that before. So I was a little bit scared, but at the same time, it did have a lot to do with my age, and I was kind of, you know, um, starstruck, I guess.
How does that evening wrap up?
So after the kiss broke, we kind of just like he backed away from me a little bit, but he was still like holding on to my arm, and we were just kind of like staring each other directly in the face. Nobody was saying anything. He kind of had like a little grin, but nobody was saying anything. I think we were just like waiting to see what each other was going to do or say next. So at that time, I just was like, hey, I gotta go. My mom is waiting to pick me up, which wasn't true, but I just walked down the street and I called her to come get me.
You were inexperienced, naive, and I imagine confused, but at the same time, the attention from somebody of that celebrity status in your mind felt good to a kid.
Yeah.
Did you get the sense, and especially now looking back, do you think he knew that? Do you think this was the way he played the game over and over and over again with now we know hundreds of girls?
You know, I sit here and I try to reason with it and saying like, he was overwhelmed with like this fame and this power, and he found that he could get what he wanted, so he just went and ran with it. But on the same hand, that's still not what a normal person does. I mean, we've seen a lot of people in his position who also don't do this. So it's a combination of, the his position at the time, but also just who he is as a person. I don't know that regardless of what he went on to do in life, I think he probably would have still had issues.
I understand the argument that it was a rock and roll lifestyle, and things are fast and loose and crazy on the bus and all that. But you know, most people, I presume, believe take part in this with you know women who are of age,
Yeah.
not the Pied Piper situation we had here, where this guy clearly was a predator who figured out a way to exploit 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls. And even after he got in trouble with law enforcement in Colorado, and we've told that story, and in one case down in Florida, it appears that he changed just a little bit in some instances to start the grooming process, maybe at 13, 14, 15, but hold off until he could figure out that he could maybe get away with this at the age of 18. And even at that level, a lot of these activities, a lot of the accounts from the girls are that of forced sexual assault.
So a little bit about that is, I had known him for a long time, but it was later on, like when I was 16 and 17, that he was kind of starting to get like really, he would change his phone number a lot. He would, whenever there would be any kind of detailed conversation, he would always call me on the phone or it would be in person. And then, he was starting to like, around those times he would say like, yeah, you can come hang out with me, like you can come, we can go wherever, you can come on the tour bus, but if anyone asks, you have to tell them that you had to show an ID, or like a parent had to bring you here, which was never true.
So, do you think his intention all along was to groom you for the ultimate, in his mind, sexual experience?
Yeah. And I want to, I want to sit here and justify it by saying something like, oh, well, I looked older than what I was, or I lied about my age, but none of those are true. I mean, when we first started talking, I was 12. So,
When you look at pictures of yourself at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, what do you see?
a baby. I mean, I even have stepchildren who are around the age that I was when I first started talking to him, and just the idea of anyone in their 20s, almost 30s, trying to talk to them, it's just disturbing.
And do you think you'll ever tell your kids, your stepkids, your own kids at some point about your experience with Dahvie Vanity, what happened to you as best you can, why it happened?
I mean, that was a little bit a part of, why I decided to come forward and tell everything that had happened, because I'll be able to, use it in some way. I'm not sure, exactly
All
how I
right.
would be able to word or have that conversation, but, I think it's useful to have.
During this period between the first interaction and then years, really at least 3 years of communicating with them, give me a sense for what that communication was like, and were there times when you thought, this isn't good, I should get out of this, or did you just go along with it because you liked the feeling, at least, that somebody of his status was flattering?
Yeah, not really. I mean, if I could go back and read every conversation we'd had over all those years, I probably would be deeply disturbed. But really, the only times that I ever felt any sense of uncomfortability was, a couple of times in person where something had happened. Yeah, I think that I just really like the attention. So even if it did give me that feeling, it was kind of overpowered by, you know, liking the attention.
You stayed with him for a period of time and you watched him treat other girls very badly. Is that fair?
Hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, that was kind of a common thing. Whenever anybody did anything against him, he would kind of send people to attack them. But I guess the specific incident was when I was 18. Um, Basically, he had found me after the show and he said, "Hey, we're all going to the hotel. Follow the van to the hotel." So we stop at a bar along the way to pick someone up, and then we go back to the hotel. Now, when we all get out of the car, she gets out of the van and she's starting to get sick. Um, so he was standing there, and this is the first time. This is when I knew that stuff was starting to not feel right because I'd never really seen him act this way to someone that was unprovoked, like that hadn't done anything to him. So after she gets out of the van, she's getting sick, and he is just, I mean, I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but he was just making fun of her and berating her in front of everybody. And we were all just standing around kind of looking at each other like, what's going on?
And what ultimately happened between Dahvie and this girl?
So when it comes to that night, I don't know. Because he separated her, he had a security guard carry her up to a hotel room. But she has come forward in another instance where she was sexually assaulted by him multiple times.
And this is a girl who we've interviewed during our investigation. I know you don't want to use her name because you haven't discussed it with her, but she has been on this show and talked about those incidents.
Yeah.
You know, you bring up the point of ditching somebody or leaving somebody behind. We had an interview last night with a girl named Michaela who came close to having an incident with him, but watched on the bus as part of the tour, was doing his spreadsheets and all kinds of things. And when he came on to her, ultimately, for what would be the last time, he kicked her off the bus in her pajamas, and she had to call somebody to come get her. And she was too embarrassed to call her own family because she had to get a friend, a guy, to pick her up. What does that say about him? You saw something very similar to that.
Yeah, so that night, and specifically, this person was not from, obviously not from where I'm from. And she was touring with them, and he basically arranged for her to get on a flight, I believe, like straight away the next morning without even her knowing. I know he talked to her later on about it, but he had already made these plans before he even had any kind of conversation with her. So that was something that I saw a lot because that was part of his, that was part of his game, was to isolate you from everybody. And then, but when he didn't want or need you anymore, he just kind of threw you out like garbage.
Take me back to the instance when he actually consummated his sexual desire with you. You were 18. Did you feel it was consensual? Did you feel it was forced?
Uh, mm, I don't really know exactly how to answer that. I kind of got the feeling when he said to follow him to the hotel that he was going to try something because he always did, but I just kind of played it down in my mind. Like before this instance happened, I never was worried that I was really going to have to do something I didn't want to do in order to like go home. So basically, after he had the security guard carry this girl up to a different room, I went up with him to a separate room, and I had my male friend with me. But before we'd even got to the room, he was trying to talk me into driving my friend home, which would have been like 3 hours out of the way. So I was like, no, I mean, if I go, I'm not going to be able to come back. So we're in the room, and when we get there, in the room comes another couple that he had invited to spend the night, who I had no idea who they were, did not know they were going to be there. So we're in a room, there's two beds, and my friend is sitting in a chair in the corner. The couple is on one bed, and Dahvie and I are sitting on this other bed. And we were kind of like all just sitting around, like we put on a movie, but it was kind of awkward. And then the other couple started like cuddling and like kissing on each other, which wasn't weird because they were a couple, but it was a little bit weird because I didn't know who they were. Like, this was the first time I'd ever even met them. And at this point, Dahvie had slowly like gone from, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm so tired." And he would like slowly inch down to, now he was laying on the bed and he was like rubbing, on my legs and stuff. And I was like, in my head, I was like, it was one thing for him to try it alone, but there's these other people in here. Like, this feels weird. So I told him that I had to go. So me and my friend get up to leave, and he follows me. I assumed it was to walk me out or whatever, but then he turns to my friend and says, just wait a minute. And then he pulls me into the bathroom in this hotel room and he starts kissing me. And I had already felt weird about what was going on, so I didn't kiss him back. I like would turn my head and he would just kind of like bury his face right here and then start like kissing on my neck. So then I'm still kind of like pulling away a little bit, and he takes his hands and puts them on my shoulders, and he's basically like forcing me onto the ground, onto my knees. And I'm hesitant, but I do it. And at this point, I'm face level with his crotch. And it was like, at this point, I knew that if something was going to happen while we were alone, I definitely didn't want to now, because like there was just like a smell. Like, he smelled really bad. So at this point, he had his hand like on the top of my head like this, so I kind of like moved my head around to get his hand off, and I was like, no, I really gotta go. And I just walked out the door, and he gave me a hug, and he texted me later that night just to say goodnight and like, did you get home okay, and stuff like that. So it ended up okay, but during, it was definitely like a side of him that I felt I'd never seen before.
We've heard the stories from other girls, survivors, where he doesn't let them go. And there's talk of, physical damage and bleeding, even because of the violent nature of what he does. And it all follows the same pattern. Um, as horrific as that is, what happened, and as unpleasant and as criminal as it clearly was, did you feel like you almost escaped in a way?
Absolutely.
Something worse that could have happened for whatever reason, whether he was tired, whether you were just persistent enough to get out of there because you had a friend with you. I mean, if you didn't have a friend there, what the hell would have happened?
Exactly. I don't know anything about this other couple. I have no idea even where they are today or anything like that. So I don't know what their intentions were, but I know, had it not been for me having someone literally waiting outside of the bathroom door, I mean, who knows?
What do you think would have happened had there not been other people around? Had it just been you and Dahvie Vanity?
This was around the time that this same thing started happening to other people. He'd always been violent. He'd always been forceful, but the timeline of kind of when he started to go basically into berserker mode lines up. Like, Elizabeth and I are essentially the same age. So kind of all of these things started happening to us all at the same time, and all of them were really unpleasant and violent.
What was it that finally made you say, okay, this is enough? I'm not going to have anything to do with them. I'm not communicating with them. I'm done. I'm out.
You know, I wish I had an answer that was something like, oh, I saw this situation and I said no. That just wasn't the case. And truthfully, I continued to talk to him until actually he blocked me. So it was around the time when he was with Fallon, and she talked about it a little bit about, you know, how she or a friend or whatever had went on her account and started blocking people, and I was one of those, and he followed suit and blocked me. So we've just never spoken since.
The whole thing strikes me in every one of these cases as just traumatic, and something that could very likely produce, PTSD, affect a girl for a long time, if not the rest of her life. Give me a sense for the long term impact that this has had on you. This toxic relationship, the attempts at sexual assault, the actual physical sexual assault, um, of somebody at your young age then.
So there are details, like, I don't want to get back into it, you know, how graphic it is, but like the smell, I will never unsmell. Like, there are things that are going to stick with me. And when it comes to the entirety of the case, you know, me in particular, I don't speak for everyone, but obviously I had a very complicated, you know, I loved him, but also I kind of hated him in the way that I knew that he did terrible things. So, like, those feelings still stick with me today. So, it's something that I'm going to have to probably deal with forever, because I had pushed it away for a long time when I was able to kind of not see anything he was up to, and I was able to kind of ignore him. But now that this is all out there, I mean, the day that he goes to jail, or the day that he dies, or whatever happens to him, I'm still not going to be okay when that happens. It's still not going to get better.
Kylie, have you had therapy? Have you talked to somebody about this?
Yeah. Um I'm definitely able to cope with it a lot better than I was in the past, but it definitely has and will have a lasting effect on me. I mean, you know, like, just an example, I've only dated, you know, one person who is like relatively close in age to me, and that's fine if it's legal and consensual, but it just kind of speaks to, like, I can't relate to people my own age anymore because of this thing that happened.
And, all this begs the question, and I've asked this, and I know part of the answer, but why do you think he's been able to get away with this for so long? And now that we're in this age of reckoning across the country on so many different levels, including the Me Too movement, Epstein, Weinstein, R. Kelly, now Onision, and Dahvie Vanity. In all of these cases, it's taken the steady drumbeat of courageous girls, women like you, coming forward, sticking their necks out, um, risking sometimes their reputation, and really putting themselves out there in a very public way to get people to pay attention, to get law enforcement to make these cases. And the reality is that a lot of girls didn't come forward for many years with the thought that, nothing's going to happen. The two girls in Colorado came forward. Ultimately, nothing happened. There was a girl in Florida who complained. Nothing happened. He was able to squeeze his way out of this. How was he able to get away with it for so long?
You know, I think it doesn't take a person of high intelligence to be able to do it. He just found a group of people that he was able to manipulate, and it was trial and error. I mean, he had those stints in the beginning and he learned from those, and he just kept kind of evolving to be able to get away with the things that he wanted to get away with. And on the same hand, I mean, he has to take personal responsibility for his actions, but even so, at the time, the music scene in general was very problematic in the way that this all was just, it was always reduced to like, oh, he likes them young, this person likes them young, and that was okay back then. I mean, I say back then like it was forever ago, but really we've only seen this change, in the last five or so years, where people are finally now saying, hey, this is not okay, and a lot more people are speaking up for those who can't or don't want to.
It's saddening to me. I look at this cases like this as not only a reporter, but as a parent, and somebody who's been involved in advocacy for children for a lot of years now, and I'm deeply sorry from the bottom of my heart that you had to go through all this, as I am for all the other brave young women who've come forward on this show and in so many other places. But what do you think it's ultimately going to take for Dahvie Vanity, Jesus Torres, to face real justice? I know you've spent some time thinking about this, but in your mind, what's it going to take?
I hope that what we have going on behind the scenes is going to be enough to do something, just get him away, get him off of the streets. I I am just so constantly worried that this is just, I mean, he's free right now. This could be happening right now for all I know. And I just hope that it doesn't take another situation to finally do something about it.
All right, Kylie, you're a brave young woman, and I appreciate you being on the show. I want you to stand by. I'm going to switch gears for a minute, but I want you to hang with me. You okay doing that?
Yep.
All right, we're going to move over to the Onision case just for a little bit here. And you talk about somebody who's been getting away with something for a long time. Our next guest, actually, I'm talking about Greg James Jackson, not our next guest. But our next guest has been on before. You know him as Kevin, who you also know online as Angry Slug, who is a student, a video game guy, a video editor, somebody who's talented in the arts of hacking, if you will. And he's also become a professional thorn in Onision's side. And most recently, Kevin Angry Slug has infiltrated one of Onision's discords, and he's been in yet another one. Kevin, thanks very much for being with us tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing good, just avoiding the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is the chat tonight?
Oh, it's so vile. Aside from the sir people.
So we've seen a shift in the behavior of the YouTube psycho brat from Washington State, Onision, from vile, offensive, bullying, aggressive videos on YouTube and some of the other places that he's frequented. And now he's on, obviously still on the Discord, but also on OnlyFans. And you talked about this a little bit last time you were on.
Yeah.
What's happening with him now? You've been watching this. You've recorded some of the VCs, as you call them, the voice chats.
Yes.
Bring me up to speed on what he's up to now and how he's making money and how he's making public appearances.
He has been hiding behind a newer server, which is hidden behind him having to direct message newer members. This is less of just a little issue or anything at all, but this is just Greg trying to tighten his hold on the members in that server.
I want to back up just for a second, and we're going to talk all about that. I know what you said about the chat. I know that there are Onision supporters in there. They're trying to crush
Yeah.
you. You know this sort of thing happens. The chat doesn't matter. You
Oh,
have the
yeah.
information. I want the information. The vast majority of the people who watch the show want the information. So, if Nissan fans are going to slam you,
Oh, yeah.
so be it. So tell me what's going on. What's happening? So he's hiding behind this new Discord. What's going on in that Discord? What is he doing? What is he saying?
So I've gotten into Greg's newer Discord, and as seen in this little screenshot that I've taken earlier, as you can hopefully see right now, I kind of blocked out my little, just letting the tech guy, there we go. Right now, I am blocking out my alternate account's name on here. But right here, as you can see, hopefully, right
Got it.
here is his newer just accounts, newer server settings, and everything involved with that. And when it comes to how he runs his Discords, the original one right here was a public Discord that would be said on his YouTube. This one right here is now a direct message that he has to send to you. Nothing that would be easily accessible to the public. So he's picking and choosing who he wants in that Discord. The issue is, he sent it to one of my alts.
Meaning somebody who wants to you and
Yes. Yes.
What does this say to you? Is he on the run? Is he just trying to eke out a living as best he can on this in this Discord with people paying for chats as well as
No. He has actually switched up and made his Discord itself free and is now doing his income from the memberships and OnlyFans.
only.
So yeah.
Let's talk about the recording that you have. Set that up for me, and then let's listen to Onision's own words.
Let me...
People know what they're going to hear here.
Yeah. So right now, this is from May 31st, about 10 days ago. Right now, we are going to be talking about the fact that he had banned one of his top supporters, and very avid supporter, I do add that, which was Blasian, another longtime moderator for his Discord and a longtime supporter of his Patreon. And as you can see on the shared screen that will pop up at some point, there we go. I have it set to the timestamp of him announcing the ban and reasoning. So let's have a listen.
Oh.
I just banned Blasian.
Why?
Let me see. This is why it's controversial. So Blasian's been a member of Patreon and this for about 1 billion years, and I have had this consistent feeling that Blasian is as close to anti-O as humanly possible without actually being anti-O.
Wait, what?
And the reason I say this is Blasian. That's fine. If any of you want to leave the server, I welcome you to leave the server because of that. Because Blasian was such a pivotal part of the server, really iconic, really important, and all that stuff. And even someone I would describe as a friend. But the problem is that I keep getting this shit. Blasian is literally actively partaking in anti-O community. Specifically, when Blasian just said, she said that there was only 3 pictures of the fucking by the water thing, which tells me that she's literally partaking in leaked photos. And then,
so when it talks about this,
Right.
he's having this big kind of I'm going to lock down everything and try and keep everyone under his control. And it just continues on past that point, which is very interesting to me because this person from my interactions with them, my interactions through the Discord, through alts, through people working with me in his Discord, it has been just very interesting, to say the least.
Interesting in what way? Has he attacked you for trying to get at the truth?
He has not, which is good. However, he has been doing it through his friends, such as his moderators, or through server members, or people that will email me directly on my email, or even just tweeting at me back when I had a Twitter. So it's not always him directly, but it will be his server members or his supporters.
Now, when you talk about this Discord and specifically this new area where he's operating, do you see anything illegal, immoral, or is it just him berating people and just being just horrifyingly rude? And for whatever reason, these people who are in there put up with it and hang out with him.
I'm grabbing a screenshot now of my conversation with someone who is confirmed to be 14 that was in contact with Onision, and I'll censor their username real quick just so that when I show it on screen.
What makes you so confident that this person is actually 14?
They sent me a picture of their ID with their name censored, and it showed their date of birth. So I am confident this person is 14. And it was also because of how they spoke in his server, which was kind of why... Let's see here. It's a lot.
Is this a 14-year-old boy or a 14-year-old girl?
14-year-old girl. Someone who is mainly Greg's demographic for targets. And this person has been... Okay, yep. I am now going to share my screen again to show off the first screenshot. Right now, it is right here. This person is the one that has been... oh well. This person is fine with their name being out there because it's already been known. It's fine. Then, as it goes on, this has been just them in contact with Greg directly through DMs, such as with the fact that people are now calling her out, and it's been very just disturbing on my end because I see these people attacking this child.
What is Greg asking of this 14-year-old girl?
As far as I know, I cannot fully say anything inappropriate. However, I'm going off of something that is kind of logical here. A 36, near 40-year-old man should not be in any form of contact with a 14-year-old girl on the internet.
But if the 14-year-old girl, and again, I'm with you on that, you know that.
Yeah.
If a 14-year-old girl is having an innocent conversation with him and is legally in this Discord chat, is it creepy but not illegal? Is it grooming and about to be illegal, or what do you make of it? What do you think is happening next?
I will not say illegal because anyone can enter a Discord server. It's not illegal to be underage and in a Discord.
But if it's my 14-year-old daughter, I'm not going to be happy about it. I can guarantee.
I wouldn't blame you. Tell them to have a seat.
Exactly.
But when that was happening, I was more concerned. I didn't care about getting into the Discord or anything involving that. It was more of just getting this kid out of there. She already got into that Discord at one point. I got in through an invite she sent me. Then I would just constantly send out that invite, get newer invites, and I've gotten a moderator named Heezy on my side in that server, named Helios. They were one of the people that was giving me invites to send out.
Do you think you potentially rescued this 14-year-old from being some sort of a victim?
Not really. This kid is smart enough. I don't feel like I did anything. I just told the kid, "Hey, leave that server. This is a 36-year-old man inviting you multiple times to get on a Discord server with him that is private and not public."
Let's switch over to what's happening on OnlyFans. I have not personally viewed. I mean, I've been sent videos of his OnlyFans.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I get reports from a lot of concerned citizens on the internet, people who I know and have never been wrong on things, that he's performing essentially sex shows on OnlyFans.
Yes.
And this is how he is making a living, that he shows some 30,000 followers, and there's some speculation that he's bought those followers to up his shoppability, if you will, on OnlyFans. I mean, who would want to see this, Kevin?
I know not me, but due to the information that I received and due to a correction that I've received through other YouTubers that looked into any evidence that I gave, it was the stuff on OnlyFans is not illegal. It's creepy as hell, but it is not illegal. I wanted that cleared up as well.
Sure, and that's fair enough. But what does it say about Greg, James, Onision, that it's come to this, where he's not even creating content that could be, construed as something creative? I mean, he's done animated things that gross, they're violent, they're objectionable, they have possibly violated terms of service, they harass people, including me, and it lets him get away with it. But at least there was some creativity, as gross and illegal as it had been. It was, there's some time into it. Now he's basically doing OnlyFans. I mean, what does that say to you as somebody who's watched this for some time?
I can say that he is very stressful for either clout or just attention. And as said through corrections that I have gotten through other creators, he's not struggling on his money. There are people buying into his OnlyFans just to make videos, or he's just selling merch and directly profiting off of the slower, just people that only support him.
How would you describe his supporters? I mean, it's hard for me, what I know, and having reported on this for going on 6 months now, it's hard for me to come to grips with the fact that there would be a large number of supporters for somebody facing the allegations he has faced, for somebody who has created videos that are, in the best case scenario, bullying and more realistically, criminal harassment, exploitation, certainly. Who are his fans? What is his fan base?
So his fan base, as I said on my last stream, last time I was on, he is a person that focuses his detrimental ideas of positivity towards like the younger people or the people that is not mentally strong enough to differentiate between affection and abuse. And these are people that are also child sex abuse survivors, domestic abuse survivors, sexual abuse survivors, or people that do have autism.
So you think he's able to identify, groom, and exploit people who are vulnerable
Correct.
to his financial gain,
Yes.
to his ego?
And yes. And these people, they range from underage to maybe in their 40s or 50s. So these people do range entirely.
All right. Well, listen, Kevin, Angry Slug. I know we'll spend more time with you in the near term here, and I appreciate you sharing your exploits, if you will. Do you ever worry that Greg, James, or one of his supporters will come after you? You've been very public about.
They already have. They've called my university making false complaints. They've tried doxing me, and they've sent hundreds of death threats. So I'm not really new to it, but it's still something I have to get used to at this point.
Right.
Though
Did you get in a little deeper than you thought you would in this?
early on, yeah, but now it's just being a kind of fall in the park per se.
Got it. All right, sir. Well, you take care, young man, and we will be in touch very, very soon. I appreciate you being on the show and having a seat with me, and thanks for the insight and taking us to a place that not many people get to go. You stay safe, stay healthy in this challenging environment of ours, okay? Kylie,
No problem.
Kylie, are you still with us from your neck of the woods in the middle of the country? You heard some of that, and again, I don't want to put you in a position of having to comment on Onision, but I spent hours today among the many projects that I was working on, talking to other young women survivors, both of Onision and of Dahvie Vanity. Do you see a parallel in terms of the grooming, the targeting, the exploitation of vulnerable girls? And I guess the question begs as we wrap up tonight globally, how many other guys like this are out there? And what do we do about it? It's a heavy question for
Yeah,
and I get it.
it doesn't surprise me. These people exist all around us, and really the only thing I have to say is, it's 2020. The things that happen to us as kids, we're not kids anymore, we're adults, and we're going to make sure that these things don't happen to any other kids. So for all of the people, Dahvie, Onision, all of these people who are now coming to light because people feel more comfortable coming forward with their story because people are fighting for each other, your day will come.
I see something else interesting, and that is that a number of the girls, now young women, who I've talked to and interviewed for this case, are also involved in the protests, the Black Lives Matter movement, in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis. Do you see any parallels there?
We have, as a society, we've progressed past the need to, the need for back in the day when like shock comedy was popular, all of these things that are at the expense of another person, like we're not standing for that anymore.
All right. Kylie, your final thoughts tonight before I let you go back to your current real life. And I'm sure very happy that you don't have to deal with what used to be your life anymore.
Like I said, I just want to say that I'm really proud of everybody involved in this situation, the survivors who have come forward, and the people who have supported all of us along the way, because I don't think any of us really ever thought that this was something that would happen. I mean, I'm sitting here. I never thought, years ago when I stopped talking to him, that I would ever be talking about this again, because I thought it was just going to always be kind of shoved, buried underneath all of his excuses. So it's just, I don't want to say it's nice to see, because it's a terrible situation, but it's nice to see that people are, believed, and there's a strong support for all of us, and we're going to get through this.
All right, Kylie, thank you very much. You take care, and all the best to your family. You should know, if you don't, that there is an amazing amount of love and support for you tonight in the stream, and a big recognition of how challenging this is, how hard it is for you and for the others to come forward, and in some cases not just once to tell a piece of the story, but to come back and say, oh, there's more, and this is what happened since I first came out to talk to you about this. And I am personally very grateful for you doing this, and I will stay in touch, and I promise you we'll stay on top of the story until we obtain some sense of justice here. Thanks very much. You take care. All right. Good night, Kylie. All right. And we will stay on top of this. I promise you, on this case, on the Onision case, on at least a half a dozen others that we're currently researching and working on. And as I mentioned earlier, I spent a large part of the day talking to people, going back over all the emails, the texts, the DMs that people have sent. And we encourage people to do that. And we vet these things very carefully, and it takes time, between the first time somebody reaches out. And sometimes, we find out things along the way that are very important. And that's a part of reporting here. So a lot going on in this world. Next week, we will continue our investigation into Dahvie, Onision. And you might recall a few weeks ago, we had a number of people on the show when I was embedded with the emergency task force. And we got a chance to meet doctors and people who represent paramedics in New York City. I mean, literally in 8 hours, we saw, more than most human beings get a chance to see in a lifetime. And lights, sirens, and a lot of access. So I was in editing today, putting that together. We're going to have that next week too, in a couple of different shows. So a lot happening here, a lot happening in our world. Stay safe, stay healthy. Remember, I'll be watching. I'll see you next week, if not before.